Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Extra Serving, a podcast from Nation's Restaurant News. I'm Sam Oches, editor-in-chief here at NRN, joined by my colleague, executive editor, Alicia Kelso. Alicia, happy Friday.
It's Friday.
It's Friday. You know, we're doing 2 in 1 week, essentially, because we recorded last week's on Monday. I feel like a different person. When we last did this, I was very tired, having been on a lot of airplanes consecutively, but I feel fresh. I feel rearing to go. And I imagine the same must be true of you too, Alicia, because you were coming off a very, very busy week when we last recorded. 18 earnings calls in 1 week. This week has been, we got a little space, we got a little breathing room so that we could send our kids off to school and lament the end of summer, which I just did on Wednesday. I know you did that this week too. So not officially fall, but not, really summer, not really through with earnings yet, but at least it's, I don't know where I'm going with all this, Alicia, but how do you feel?
Yeah, we were able to cut air a little bit this week compared to last week. There were only, I think, a handful of earnings. And we're trailing at the end of Q2 season, which is, it's good. I love it. I love being in the throes of it, but I also really relieved when I'm able to look
You do
back.
love it abnormally, an abnormal amount. This is
That's
like
fair.
your holiday, your Super Bowl.
Oxygen to me. But it's always fun. It's like a big puzzle. All right, what's a puzzle going to look like this quarter? Don't ask.
I was going to say, this is not a good puzzle. This puzzle, the pieces do not fit. We are all left wondering what the heck, because you had more colorful words for it on the last episode, but some are messing the sheets in the bed, and some are doing fine. But it's strange, and the pieces aren't fitting. Let's jump into it, because one of the puzzle pieces that has been the easiest to place the last several quarters has been CAVA. CAVA has been this absolute rocket ship, kind of vibes of Chipotle circa 2012, 13. Where, all these consecutive quarters, I'm sure you know how many, but many consecutive quarters of positive same-store sales growth, which, by the way, continued. But, so we'll get into some of the context of why there's some negative vibes going here. But CAVA seemed about as sure a thing going in the industry right now, minus maybe Chili's, which we'll get to in a little bit. But they underwhelmed. So even though their same-store sales were positive, I believe they were positive about 2%, 2.1%. Traffic was flat, and they missed expectations, and their stock plummeted because, whoa boy, Wall Street can be fickle. But Alicia, what is going on with CAVA?
Yeah, well, to your point, that, the sky is not falling. They were still up 2.1%. Traffic was flat. This is a wildly different story than what we're used to seeing from CAVA, to your point. Mm-hmm. Largely has to do with the tough comparison from 2024, in which the company introduced steak to the menu. That protein, everybody wants steak right now. As you know, the protein cleared a path for 14.4% same-store sales and 9.5 bump in traffic last year. So that's a tough lap. And so I think, CAVA is still very sound and fundamental and strong on unit economics. Their cash on cash returns for their new 2024 openings are 40 plus %, which is their 2-year expectation was. So they're opening strongly in new markets. And, I think that's really the story. CAVA is not, again, it's not on fire. It did have a little bit of a tough comparison. It had a tough quarter. I want to be mindful here. CAVA did experience a lot of the consumer headwinds that a lot of other companies have reported on. So though it is lapping tough comps, both on new openings and that steak launch, it is also dealing with that consumer pullback that we've heard at a majority of companies during this round of earnings.
Yeah. Yeah. This is where I think I've said before, I'll say again, I don't envy leaders at these companies because so much of this is unfair, right? The fact that like CAVA released this remarkably successful product last year, and it's almost not fair that they have to they have to beat that in order to impress stakeholders. You know, that this is the name of the game. Everybody knows what they signed up for, but everything is context. And I don't think you mentioned this, Alicia, but their revenue is up 20%. Now, a lot of that's new unit openings, but they're also increasing their average unit volume now up to 2.9 million. I think it was up from 2.6. So there's a lot of good here. And I think ultimately, you know, you have to see CAVA as something of a bellwether that, you know, again, minus Chili's, which again, we'll talk about here in a second, you know, nobody is safe from the headwinds that are facing the industry today. And Alicia, remind me, the part of their call, they talked about some of those headwinds, right? Tell me about, you know, what CAVA said was kind of the situation going on them as it relates to those headwinds.
The consumers was their biggest headwind other than that lap. And they said that consumers are just in a fog. And so this is a bigger narrative, Sam, than just CAVA. And I think what interested me is this was really surprising to hear this over and over again from companies like McDonald's to Sweetgreen to CAVA, because at the end of the first quarter, if you'll recall, that first quarter kind of sucked, right? It was dampened a lot by weather and illness and a dramatic, you know, fall in consumer sentiment, because at that time, nobody knew what tariffs were going to come to fruition. It was just a lot of uncertainty. But most executives expressed sequential improvement in sales and traffic coming out of the first quarter and into the second quarter. And so there was reason to be extremely optimistic for the second quarter. And that has just halted altogether. And now we're hearing, you know what? These consumer pressures will probably continue through the duration of this year. And, you know, CAVA is not immune to that, which I think kind of surprised me, but maybe shouldn't have, because we saw Chipotle turn in a negative quarter, you know, their second in a row, by the way, which just doesn't happen at Chipotle. You know, we saw Sweetgreen fall really far. They had a terrible quarter with, I think traffic was down over 10%. And so these fast casual concepts, which used to be very insulated against a struggling consumer, especially last year. Fast casual was the bright star last year when things started getting really, really tough. That is no longer the case. Fast casual is vulnerable. And why this surprises me, Sam, is because what's happening in the industry, why a lot of executives are warning, kind of sending warning signals, is largely because of a pullback from the low income consumer. And the the upper middle class and high income consumers are still spending in droves. And the Bank of America just came out with a report that showed this increasing bifurcation between both of those sets of consumers. Higher income consumers tend to gravitate toward concepts like CAVA and Sweetgreen, but with their recent reports and this commentary about consumers, being pressured, leads me to believe that they're going elsewhere or staying at home, just like low income consumers are. I don't know what to make of that.
If I could do a quick detour here, because this is something that has bugged me. This might not be relevant to you at all, Alicia, but maybe, or you've also seen it. Are you familiar with the Morning Brew newsletter? I enjoy this newsletter. They use this very curious terminology when referencing Chipotle, CAVA, and Sweetgreen. They call it bowl slop concepts. Now, I think I've covered this industry long enough to say that that's offensive, and shut up, Morning Brew. I don't usually come for anybody, but my goodness gracious, because what these concepts, again, I think to your point, are Chipotle and CAVA, again, historically for the last 5 years, about as safe a bet as you can place in this industry. Sweetgreen's been a little bit more of a roller coaster to some degree. But I don't know where that term came up, and I think it's cutesy 20-somethings thinking they're coming up with. Anyway, don't call anything slop when it comes to food, people. Goodness gracious. Anyway, that was my little detour. I
Being
read it
protective
twice.
of our industry,
I'm
right?
being protective. I read it twice, and they put it in twice. Once on an Instagram post and once in their newsletter, and I thought, who does that? Who calls something slop in the restaurant industry? Okay, getting off my pedestal. Sorry, everybody.
It's fine. No, I appreciate
and
that.
again, I usually don't call out people, especially fellow media brethren, especially those I respect. But if you're listening this morning, Brute, cut it out. Anyway, but I think to your point here, it's really curious to look at in an economic climate like this, and people start pulling back on their discretionary income. You start to see, what do people really value in their food decisions? So when I think it comes to these bowl concepts, let's call it, if we want to lump all of them into one category, perhaps some customers, especially value-oriented customers, see those more as a luxury, something that, is when they're feeling a little bit better about their finances, you go and get that, large portion bowl that is going to cost you $13, $14, that maybe there's a value equation problem with those concepts. And that as you pull back and you start to reserve that spending for maybe more comfort items, it would be interesting to start to see some of the breakdown, and maybe you have some of this, Alicia, but like understanding where, sandwich and pizza and chicken, let's just say, call it what it is, chicken continues to crush. But also where I'm going with all of this is to end up at full service, this is perhaps the, going back to the puzzle we're putting together here, this is the piece I can't figure out how to place, Alicia, because full service, which has struggled mightily for many years, showing bizarre signs of life. And so where I guess I put these pieces together is to ask, and maybe you agree with this, like, could it be that consumers are pulling back on something like a CAVA, but actually trading up in a bizarre way? Like the low-income consumer, if we're bifurcating the consumer, the low-income consumer is going to be more apt to trade down. And we know McDonald's reported positive sales. Other QSRs, there's some positivity, although as we talked about last week, that's not across the board in QSR. Could it be that some other customers, the higher income consumers, are actually trading up to full service? What do you make of that?
It's a good question. I think, you talk about Morning Brew and being mad about bowl slop. It's kind of how I felt when a certain publication claimed that casual dining was dead. That made me very angry.
And you should know by now, people, you never declare something dead. Goodness gracious.
I have responded to that every which way to Rome, by the way. And, this quarter was especially strong for the casual dining concepts, not just Chili's and Texas Roadhouse, by the way, which are, surefires. And so I think a couple things are happening here. I think one, consumers are choosing to eat at restaurants significantly less because they're feeling that pressure in their wallet. So when they are going out to eat, they're going to a place where they can have more than just a drive-through experience. Whereas a CAVA is a relatively frequent experience, maybe for lunch or maybe, a quick dinner on the way home from practice or something. Those occasions are starting to go away because consumers are clearly stressed. Same with QSR. And we are seeing frequency issues across both segments in addition to traffic issues. And so when we're pulling back, you know what? We're going to make this dining out situation a little bit more of a special occasion. We're not going to do that at a QSR or fast casual. We're going to go and have somebody wait on us and cook for us, where we don't have to clean up after us, and just sort of a little bit more bang for the buck, a little bit more holistic value. We talked about this last week, how the definition of value has really changed, especially in the past 5 years. And I think this is all a part of that. Two, as it applies specifically to the second quarter, casual dining had a very strong quarter mostly. But I also want to know, and maybe caution, the second quarter is always strong for casual dining. We've got Mother's Day in there. We've got Father's Day in there. We've got graduation in there. I think BJ's had a really strong quarter, but they reported record sales on Mother's Day because people aren't going to go to McDonald's to celebrate Mother's Day, right? So Q2 has always historically been strong. Easter, I think, is in there. It's always strong for sit-down concepts. So we'll see what Q3 looks like without those special occasions. mixed in. But I think we have, if we talk about casual dining, and I don't want to be dismissive of the comeback and the performance. And I think it's funny because of that one publication that declared it dead. I want it to keep going. Of course I do. But I want to caution that this could come with a little bit of a caveat because of the Q2 calendar.
Well, and you wrote about the consumer price index and how restaurants, food service continues to outpace other industries when it comes to increasing prices. And that's especially true of full service. So that's a really curious piece to this, which is full service is increasing prices more than most, and yet still is kind of, cresting on that wave. But perhaps perhaps to your point, Alicia, we might see in Q3 that truly having crested and starting to come back down. I mean, all of this, in all of these earnings calls, as you reported, a lot of the executives are calling this there's choppiness. And that choppiness, whether you're on a boat or a plane or anything, that choppiness ain't fun, right? Because it's like up and down and up and down. And it's really hard to understand what's going on, but perhaps the up that casual dining had in Q2 could come down yet in Q3. But
to your point, I worry that casual dining will start to lose some of the pricing power that it has enjoyed over the past year. Let's not forget that a lot of these companies have been very savvy on the marketing front. Chili's, of course, is a case study here in attacking basically limited service for overpricing throughout the past several years and saying, hey, we've got a $10.99 deal here, and you don't have to, we'll serve you, and we'll clean up after you, and you don't have to eat it in your car. And it's been very effective. But the general inflation level in, last month was 2.7. Full service menu prices were 4.4. So this is really significantly outpacing general inflation. And then QSR 3.3. So I wonder if that pricing power at full service will start to erode a little bit. But, you also have to contend for tipping, of course, but we have two recent studies that just came into our inboxes from Toast and Square that showed that tipping has declined significantly over the past year. So there's a lot. This is a big puzzle with a lot of pieces.
Yes, and not quite sure what picture we're getting out of this puzzle just yet. Alicia, I got to tell this quick little story. I don't know if it means anything. Maybe I'm reading into it, but last night took my son through the Dairy Queen drive-thru to celebrate the end of swim lessons. This Dairy Queen is next to a Wendy's. So the drive-thru, we're going between a Dairy Queen and a Wendy's. And my son, who is 6, goes, "Dad, restaurants are all the same." And I said, what do you mean by that, man? And he goes, "Well, this is the same as what we do at Wendy's." And, he's talking about going through the drive-thru. He's looking at the Dairy Queen food menu, which is all burgers. And, look, he's 6 and his experiences with restaurants are very limited. But I thought it was an interesting thing because then I said, well, how sometimes we go and sit down at restaurants? He goes, like Texas Roadhouse. And the meat of the conversation was about that. What sticks out to him, who, again, no discretionary income yet, don't I know it? He is, the experience even resonates down to that 6-year-old. Now, he still loves Dairy Queen and Wendy's. But like it to me, I ascribed it more value of a conversation than I probably should. But to me, it was just like a reminder of just like how much experience matters in distinguishing your restaurant, and how truly when you start to feel like every other restaurant, 6-year-olds are not your core demographic, but 6-year-old parents are going to be your core demographic, and you have to really set yourself apart. Now, this all segues into, we want to talk about 3 companies that reported this week. Again, we're getting to them. Chili's, we'll talk about that in a second. But I want to start with Red Robin, actually, because Red Robin, I wonder where you place this puzzle piece, Alicia, because Red Robin, I believe sales and traffic were actually down. However, important to indicate here, important to note, and I think this is, again, better context for the sake of companies like a CAVA, profitability is up. And at the end of the day, for a public company, of course, your mandate to your shareholders is profit. And so positive signs of life for a company like that, which has found ways to be profitable, even if revenue may be down or same-store sales may be down. And I don't know, Alicia, do you feel like Well, first off, what do you think about Red Robin and where it is in the midst of all this? But also, do you think, maybe restaurants in a difficult season like this need to start thinking about, well, let's just if our sales and traffic are flat or down, like let's really lean into profitability at this point, figure out ways to streamline the operation.
Wall Street liked Red Robin's earnings report, despite a negative 3.2% same-store sales number and a negative 5.5% traffic number. The stock actually went up. There's several moving pieces with this company, as there have been for several years now. And when Dave Pace took over as CEO in April from GJ Hart, who really set the foundation on this North Star turnaround plan, and when he came on board in 2023, Dave Pace did not change a lot of that North Star plan and fed into his plan. The biggest change that he made was prioritizing traffic in a way that, GJ Hart was kind of playing more of the long game, but very reluctant to jump into the value environment. And Dave Pace has been opposite. Conversely, he's been very aggressive on this, including investing into their $9.99 Big Yum deal, which was launched in January and has shown really positive traction thus far. And what has happened is their profit has increased. Their EBITDA has increased tremendously because of a lot of the efficiencies they're finding, especially on that labor line, and just focusing on those efficiencies to generate more profit, and then taking that profit and reinvesting back in the company on things like restaurant refreshes. There's a lot of deferred maintenance that needed to be done at this brand, and this value proposition that it's now a part of, that it wasn't really previously part of, just reinvesting back into the brand in several different ways, which is always good, right? A lot of companies just don't invest enough back into their brand, and that kind of starts showing up, in the long term. I think one of the big takeaways here for me from the Red Robin call is at the beginning of this year, they forecasted 50 or so restaurants for the chopping block to close because they were underperforming. They were going to evaluate, quote, approximately 70 locations. They have since taken about 20 of those off the list because they turned things around at those 20 or so locations and started generating profitability where they hadn't been doing so. Yeah. And he said that there are more to come. And so this work, this nuts and bolts work on efficiencies, on finding cost savings throughout the P&L, the most random places, and really focusing and doubling down on generating that profit to reinvest back into the company is starting to bear fruit here in the changes that Pace has made since he came on board.
Yeah, and that's good to see. I mean, Red Robin has had a kind of wild ride because they had to put out this turnaround plan because, well, you got to turn around from when you're in a bad spot, you got to turn around from that. And so they were in this difficult position, had put in this turnaround plan. It's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but again, to look at how to be in this position that they are in facing these headwinds as a full service company with a higher average ticket than many of their competitors, I think that is impressive to see. And one other company, though, that maybe is trending a little bit downward would be Noodles. Noodles and Company, their traffic is down, sales are down. Restaurants, they've announced some closures themselves. What seems to be happening there?
Sales were up.
Sales were up.
Yeah, same store sales were up 1.5%. So, but a lot of that came from pricing. Traffic was down 2.5%. Choppy was the word of the Noodles earnings call, as it was several other,
including McDonald's, right? Even didn't
choppy. Like, yeah. I think we talked last week, the word of the first quarter was uncertainty. The word of the second quarter is unquestionably choppy. And don't worry, I'll pour through transcripts to have a definitive number for you by next week. Opposite of Red Robin, Noodles is actually closing more restaurants than it anticipated when it announced closures at the end of last year. And so I think that's a narrative. It goes with that weird quarter that fast casual had in general. Noodles struggles this quarter came despite all of that menu work that has been going on. And that menu work, including, this new lineup of mac and cheese, has really resonated positively. But as with, I would probably think it would be confident to say most companies, the value perception just didn't land. Their executives noted that especially in March, the value perception just changed for customers. Now that corroborates with consumer sentiment falling off a cliff in March, but those consumer sentiment scores have since rebounded a little bit skosh since, that sort of bottom out in March. They're still down woefully compared to last year. And some companies are going to struggle with that more than others because when customers, when their sentiment drops, they become significantly more selective. And we've talked about it here. If you're not top of mind, you're not going to be in that consideration set in an environment like this.
And it gets back to what I was saying earlier, which is like, as you pull back on your discretionary spending, to your point, your consideration set is also going to shrink, and you're going to go to those restaurants that maybe have a little bit extra meaning to you. And so Noodles is a great example of this, where it's like, as you pull back, now Noodles may be a value oriented fast casual. There's certainly value for a family. Like they've done a lot around kids meals and the kids eat free and all this stuff. But if you're going to spend less outside the home on food, that occasion that you did once a month or, twice a month compared to the once a week or twice a week, that's the one that's probably out the window, and you're maybe increase the one that you're going to on a weekly basis. So we mentioned this on our last episode, Alicia, but the competition, the sheer amount of competition in the restaurant industry, faced with the fact that customers are pulling back is if you want to get really, really 30,000 foot viewpoint there, I think that's what we're facing here. There's just too much competition, and consumers are pulling back and being much more selective, and that's going to inherently leave some out in the dust. So let's get to it. And I have a prop for this, Alicia, because it was sitting literally next to my desk, so I felt like I had to grab it.
Too, and
you want to grab it?
Matchy. I'm not going to do that in the middle
because it's all unbuttoned. I got this big old head.
I have my Chili's sign in the background.
Okay. For those who are only listening, not watching, I've put on my Chili's hat because it just, as the rest of my life as a parent, things are just sitting haphazardly around me on the floor and all over the place. It looks organized behind me, but Alicia, I can assure you the rest of my surroundings are not.
I'm good not knowing.
That's what you get when your office is also a playroom. But the benefit here is that my Chili's hat was sitting nearby, so I could use it for this. Alicia, I mean, what's going on at Chili's? Chili's just, again, is like made of gold or something. What a case study in a restaurant where everything seems to be going right. Now, of course, as with everything, context is important. And so the quarters they are lapping over last year, Chili's is I don't want to say it's a low bar here, but like Chili's is outperforming what was, I think, relatively meager results from last year. And if you do the 2-year stack, especially, it's just incredible. Alicia, throw some numbers at us. How are they doing?
Your stack, 39%. I mean, I could drop the mic and end the podcast on that. Yeah. Their fifth straight quarter of double-digit same stores. Fifth. 5.
This is Popeye's chicken sandwich numbers, folks.
It is.
At the time was unprecedented. Now it's a little bit more precedented, but it's still.
Yeah. Yep. That's the clearest thing I can think of with Wingstop had a really impressive run, for a while, but I think Chili's is probably starting to take over those narratives. 16% on traffic, Sam.
Woo.
16%. Kevin Hochman, as he does, credited a lot of this to marketing, and the company has invested $105 million in marketing in the past 3 years. Wow. He's a marketing guy. We saw what he did at KFC, So, and as we've discussed, 10 minutes ago, a lot of that is just directly, aggressively going after this consumer perception that fast food has simply gotten too expensive. It has been one of the most effective marketing campaigns, I think, in restaurant history. I mean, you cannot be dismissive of the fact that you were listening to customers. They were complaining about the fact that fast food has gotten way too inaccessible while they're pressured with rent and utilities and everything else getting out of control, things they need to spend money on. And Chili's said, you know what? We've got this 1099 deal with a bunch of stuff. And I think this is just a continued tailwind. Now, all of these 5 quarters, this remarkable performance has allowed Chili's to really sort of push the gas on its success. It's a virtuous cycle here.
Mm-hmm.
So they're getting all this money and all the sales, and they're just aggressively reinvesting back into the brand. Like we talked about with Red Robin, that's really critical. A lot of brands, I would argue, don't do that nearly enough. And we're seeing some of that, in some of these results. So, Chili's they're relaunching their chicken sandwich, for example. They're coming up with new menu items like nachos and a new queso, new condiments. I believe they said their deferred maintenance work is all done, which helped with these. It wasn't just the 1099 value. It was the fact that you went there for the 1099 menu and really liked the experience, liked the environment, liked the atmosphere because they did the work to improve those things.
Yeah.
Now they're going to start remodeling and they're going to start growing units again. They're investing in tech. Again, virtuous cycle. When you have quarters that are winning this big, you have the luxury of prioritizing investments in a lot of things. So I don't know if the story is going to end anytime soon.
Well, certainly next year, you're going to have trouble in lapping a quarter like these. But, I think one thing that's important here is to say, you can get rid of that narrative that it's lightning in a bottle, right? Like, it's supposing that this was, well, they had those mozzarella sticks on TikTok and here you go, because it's like, you got to give credit to Chili's for this wasn't a one pop, because we all know how quickly social media moves. And we all know that after the mozzarella stick thing, people moved on, but Chili's was able to hold on to them, hold their attention and hold their loyal business, which I think is the important part here. It's something that we've talked about before, but just to reemphasize here, the work that they put into this brand after Kevin Hochman arrived as CEO, they put in an incredible amount of work in improving their operations, improving their quality, and improving the system overall, so that when that lightning struck, they were able to capture it and not let go of it, because it's like, again, any brand could go viral at any moment. That's just the nature of this. And that's what I think most brands really hope and pray that happens. But can you sustain it? Do you have the infrastructure, the system built out to hold on to that lightning when it strikes? Chili's did. And I think that's why we're seeing this sustained performance, is because, they captured it, they held on to it. And then to your point, Alicia, they reinvested. So you can't sit back and wait for these things to happen. You got to be ready to strike. And even if you don't go viral, just like, have a plan, reinvest in your business. And as, success comes, make sure that you continue to build off of it so that success can beget success. So there's a lot to like here. Much like Popeyes and their chicken sandwich, Popeyes came back down to earth. Much like, a lot of brands that experience this nice pop, you can't sustain double-digit quarter growth for that long. It just can't happen. And I think next year you'll start seeing them come back down to earth. However, I think it's safe to say the Chili's brand is revitalized. A brand that I don't want to say was left for dead, because we know we don't like to talk like that, but a brand that I think did not have momentum, did not have excitement for a long, long while, is suddenly a very important part of this industry, a very important part of the consideration set for a lot of customers. And, whether it's, who cares what the sales growth is? I just think Chili's has created for itself this long-term trajectory that has reasserted it as one of the, restaurant contenders out there for all the other full service players.
I think they cracked a very challenging code right now, where the consumer is far more selective So when the consumer is selective, how do you become top of mind and cut through that noise? And then when you become top of mind, how do you offer the experience that matches the quality, that matches the value to stay top of mind as part of that selectiveness every single time there's a decision to be made on where to eat out? They did it. They're doing it. And, we beat the horse dead here, but it's a case study. And I think it would be wise to study their playbook on how they did that.
Totally. Yeah. Well, if there was one puzzle piece that we could easily fit into this puzzle, it was that one. And I think we've successfully done it. TBD on where things go from here. But Alicia, as always, appreciate your reporting. And you enjoyed Las Vegas next week. Alicia's off to Las Vegas. I'll be here all by my lonesome.
Not play.
For work. All right. Now we are going to roll into a conversation between our colleague, senior food and beverage editor, Bret Thorn, with the Shake Shack Vice President of Culinary Innovation, John Karangis. Alicia, as always, thank you.
Hello, John Karangis. How you doing?
I'm doing very well, Bret. Thank you for having me.
I'm glad you're here. I'm psyched to talk about what's going on at Shake Shack because you're doing a lot. You got some new pickle chips, you got a barbecue lineup, and it seems like a whole sort of mission to have a continuous cadence of LTOs. That's what it sounds like your CEO, Rob Lynch, has in mind. But I don't know. You're the expert on what's going on with Shake Shack food, so why don't you tell us?
Absolutely. And you're exactly right. We have a lot of exciting things happening as we continue to, build off our amazing legacy of 25 years young. As you know, we're born from a fine dining restaurant company, and we're sort of doubling, tripling down on innovation as a whole. And we've got a lot of exciting things happening today, tomorrow, and the foreseeable future for sure.
So let's talk about some of the recent things you guys did, such as pickle chips, barbecue menu. And also, I don't know if this really counts, although we could talk about whatever we want, that now on your app, if I want a soda, I can order a soda for $1, which I love that. I mean, well, what were you guys thinking? Let's start with the soda thing and then go from there. What were you guys thinking when you were like, let's charge $1?
I mean, look, I think we were really just looking to extend what we think is a great value to our guests and to our fans. What better way to complement a meal and have something refreshing to drink? And it's proven to be really successful and exciting for us. It's the first time I think we've ever done that sort of thing at Shake Shack's history, and I think it may have helped inform possibly how we continue to innovate in the future.
So it's bringing people in, is what you're saying.
It's bringing people in. It's making them happy. It's hopefully letting them walk away from Shake Shack feeling just a little bit better than they thought they would have felt prior to.
Certainly whenever I see somebody, we have a Shake Shack across the street from our office, and because we're on 3rd Avenue between 39th and 40th, so we have that one. You know the one next to the Bleak Fitness.
Busy one.
Yes. Anytime I see someone with a drink, I say, you could get that for $1 at Shake Shack. And so I'm doing some marketing for you.
Thank you for doing that. We appreciate it.
But you're in charge of R&D, not pricing, right? So like menu development. So let's talk about the new side dish and the barbecue stuff. Well, let's start.
Sure. Let's start with fried pickles. It's interesting. We've always loved our Shack pickles. So they're, and I'm sure you've had them. They're pretty thick. They've got a great texture, great overall flavor profile, and we believe it's always complemented our food incredibly well. And we have, through the last couple of years, sort of gotten into developing and just sort of innovating behind the scenes with frying our pickles in a similar flavor profile that we fry our chicken breasts for our Chicken Shack. And we have recently, as you mentioned, launched it to incredible success. Our teams are operating it pretty consistently well across the board. And we're serving it alongside our Shack Ranch sauce. So it's a really great new side item that we're just really excited about.
Were there any challenges in developing that, like getting the breading right, that kind of thing?
But there's always great challenges in developing, but true to form, we were pretty relentless on making sure that we were fully satisfied with it before it launched. So it took a long time to dial in the right flavor profile for the what we call the breader or the exterior, and we didn't want it to be soggy. We didn't want the pickle chips in the inside to get too mushy or to overcook. So it's striking that balance of texture and flavor that sometimes isn't as easy as it sounds, because ultimately what you're doing with a fried pickle is you're trying to bread something. You're trying to have a dry breader attached to a wet product. I mean, you think about all the fried items, whether it be, mozzarella sticks and, chicken breasts and all those things. We're starting with a very wet pickle. So it took us a long time in development to get it right. And we're happy to finally have landed that plane.
Did you have to figure out a way to dry out the pickles a little bit or something like that?
Well, absolutely. That's just right, because you want to make sure that the pickle is, doing its pickle thing, which is staying in its acidulated flavored water. And then you have to dry it to the right sort of way so you can adhere the breading, and then to do that at scale. It took a while, but we're there.
And you say it's performing well.
It's performing very well for us. We've done lots of research and testing prior to, and it's beating our projection for sure.
Well, that's great. I know upper management wants there to be more side innovation, which makes sense because obviously it contributes to incremental sales. And, if you're already selling a soda for $1, why not have them come in and get some crinkle fries or a pickle chip or whatever else? So are you working on other sides?
Yeah, there's a lot of things we're working on, different sides, even looking at different times of the day that we could potentially offer some sides. One of our greatest challenges is to make sure that whatever we add doesn't take away anywhere else, right? So if something is delicious, but potentially could have a negative impact on how we operate our core business, then that wouldn't set us up for success. So there's a lot of things that we have in development behind the scenes that we're being really, really strategic with. And want to make sure that we have the right product. We have, research to help inform that direction. And then we're able to, execute it in a way that's going to meet all of our sort of operational guidelines. It has to flow well within our kitchen. We need to ensure that we don't exceed guest wait time. If anything, we're looking to expedite that wait time, and all trying to do that while creating food fresh to order. Again, is a challenge, but we look at challenges in a very opportunistic way. And so we're just super excited about the initial phases of development. Once we get the initial research to support that, and fully committed to continue to deepen our innovation pipeline.
So you mentioned different times of day. Does that mean that maybe you'll have some specials at slow times, like 2:30 in the afternoon, to get people to do that kind of thing?
Yeah, I mean, that's what we're thinking about right now, for sure. I mean, really early in the development process, but we know where there's opportunity, and not just with us, but with our competitors. And my goal is to work with my team to create the products, and our cross-functional team we work very closely with, make sure that everyone's on the same page, fully aligned, and all those opportunities are ahead of us, and we want to take advantage of as much of them as we can that makes sense for the business.
Well, obviously there can't be operational hiccups, like they have to fit within the existing system or you're messing up.
Correct. But of course, we look at new pieces of equipment all the time. We challenge just the overall status quo of our operations. Just because we've done something one way for a long time doesn't mean that we use that to sort of handcuff us. We try to peel back all the layers and look for ways that we can, maybe rewrite a rule, but ensuring that, all of our core principles remain the same. And let's take care of our people. Let's take care of our guests, make sure the product is right. And if there's a way that we can change how we've made a core menu ingredient to help us continue to innovate, then we'll do that.
So there's probably a fair amount of research that you're doing into streamlining what you already do, fixing whatever it is, making your burgers even better and your chicken sandwich even more delicious.
Absolutely.
Well, I know that your upper management has been working on streamlining operations and just sort of making everything efficient and better. And I guess that opens up the opportunity for you guys to figure out on the culinary side how to leverage like new skill sets or efficiencies that you guys have.
Absolutely. Our operations teams have been heroic over the last many years, but in the last couple of years specifically is when we've really challenged ourselves in unique ways. And so that team has inspired us to, and it kind of goes both ways is, who wrote the rule. Our founder, Danny Meyer, would often say, who wrote the rule that something needs to be a certain way. So we're challenging ourselves the same way as, who wrote the rule that just because we've been doing it great for so many years doesn't mean we can't look at another way that, we could be even more efficient. Again, ensuring the quality is never compromised. If anything, escalated even beyond where it is, just so we can continue to achieve our strategic goals. And our innovation pipeline is definitely one of those goals.
And one of the innovations you recently introduced was your Dubai Shake, which started out as like a extreme LTO, right? Like it was at like 30 locations. And that's because you guys, as I understand it, had to like griddle or toast the phyllo like in restaurant, which was not feasible on a large scale. But then you guys found a product that you didn't have to like toast in-house. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, our Dubai Shake actually started in Dubai. I'm currently in my office, which is adjoining to our innovation kitchen. So one of our team members developed that shake for Dubai, where it launched successfully for a very short time. Founder and our CEO happened to be out in Dubai and had the shake and absolutely loved it. And word got back out to us really quick within minutes. And, there was a desire to see if we could launch it, as you mentioned, in 30 shacks. So we did that really quickly, probably the quickest we've ever turned around a innovation launch at that size. And so we launched that for 30 days, incredibly successful. It was a really great challenge for our operations teams, as I touched on just a couple of minutes ago. And due to that success, it's taken us to where we are today. We were able to launch it nationally in all of our shacks. And that was, as you mentioned, our supply chain team, and credit them always for sourcing us the ingredients we need in all of our shacks. They were able to source us a product that we felt needed additional flavor profile of toasting it, which our teams did on the grill with a little butter and salt. And that was a significant amount of prep time that it takes away from some other duties. Had to be really strategic and careful on how we were able to do that, which is one of the reasons why we limited the amount of shakes we were selling at that time. And then we launched that successfully. And then when that ended, we looked at opportunities to go and get an already toasted product. So our supply chain team, once again, sourced a really great product that is not needed for our teams to have to toast, but still has all the great flavor that we want to have in that shake.
And what is in the Dubai Shake?
Well, I'll take a step back. The Dubai chocolate bar is a tempered chocolate bar where the outside of the bar has snappy chocolate texture, and in the inside of the bar is a mixture of toasted phyllo dough and pistachio paste. And it's super delicious and it's very craveable. And it's sort of very sweet, but also it's sweet in the sense it's desserty, but it's not sweet in a sense of like cloying, and there's the savory elements of the phyllo and the pistachio paste removed of sugar really give it a great sweet savory balanced dessert. So our goal was to do everything we can to pay homage to the bar and replicate it in a way that works for us. So we looked at it as an opportunity to be really literal. So we line the inside of our disposable shake cup with some high quality chocolate, and we make the sort of magic shell, if you will, of chocolate that once you pour it in the cup and remove the excess, you have essentially the outside of the candy bar, and then the inside of it is a mixture of our frozen vanilla custard that's blended with 100% premium quality pistachio paste and some of that toasted katafi. So that gets blended, poured into the shake, and then we top the shake for garnish and for additional texture and then visual of the toasted kataffi and a little chopped fresh pistachios. And then the guest is really encouraged to sort of squeeze the cup, enjoy it with a straw, enjoy it with a spoon, and hopefully that gives them the incredible sensation of the Dubai chocolate bar, but done in a way that is very reminiscent of what we've always tried to do, was to elevate foods that people love.
And kataffi, in case people don't know, is shredded phyllo dough, and then you toast it. And so by squeezing the cup, you're breaking that magic shell, right? And then you get the chocolate pieces mixed into it. And you guys are charging like more than $9 for it or something like that. Like, it's a premium shake.
It's a premium shake for sure. I believe it's $9.99, and we, wanted to extend that, to our guests for a value. And we believe due to the, not just the premium ingredients of our core ingredients, meaning our frozen vanilla custard, but all the other ingredients are ultra premium as well.
Well, and you're certainly promoting it. I see it all over my social media feed. So thank you a lot, John Karangis, for visiting with me, and I hope we get to do it again soon.
Thank you very much, Bret. It's a pleasure being here.
Belgioioso Cheese is a family-owned and operated company specializing in artisan Italian cheesemaking. Using only natural ingredients and fresh local Wisconsin milk, master cheesemakers handcraft the full line of exceptional cheeses, guided by a commitment to quality and a respect for tradition. Ask your distributor about Belgioioso's award-winning fresh mozzarella, burrata, ricotta, mascarpone, American Grana, and Parmesan. At Belgioioso, every cheese is a specialty.